I cannot express how my knees and my elbows were shaking in the moments when I was about to do it, especially with someone that I like. Say that like I'm hurt right now and I feel pain. At the beginning, for example, when I started doing it in my close friendships, my friends were like, whoa, this is too much. And I didn't feel that I connect fully. And I craved connection and I craved belonging. I craved to form this deep, intimate relationship with people. But how can I do it if I do not show these parts of myself?
Welcome everyone to another episode of Aufkläramt.
Buongiorno.
Today we are delving into the realm of relationships and communication, connection, complexity of the human bonds. Today, my guest, my beloved friend, and a remarkable soul, Ania. It's such a pleasure to have you today here with me.
Great to be here, man. Great to be here.
I will just attack it. Our relationship is something quite unique, I would say, right? We met each other on Bali, but we were neighbors, but we didn't even introduce ourselves to each other because on your forehead was written like, "Don't bother me at all." Nobody, I was not even allowed to breathe around you. So we didn't really connect it in Bali, but then we randomly bumped into each other on this beach on Koh Phangan, and afterwards we connected in an amazingly, surprisingly way, which I haven't expected. My question would be, could you share with our listeners what makes our bond so special in maybe 3 sentences to begin with? Because we will dig into it later on.
Yeah, so the cheesy way to say it is just like, because we're just so special. We're both amazing, and our bond is amazing. And now we can just close this podcast because everything was already said and clear. Yeah, and by the way, I just want to make a small remark about like when we've met in Bali. Yes, when we've met in Bali, we haven't spoken. Like we just like said hello to each other. I just had like my normal resting Eastern European face. It's very casual. So the first thing that I would say is just like, don't try to judge people by their cover. Like sometimes their face look like a resting beach face, but actually they're very fun people. And what makes our bond so special? I don't think it's special, man. I think it's just mature communication, I would call it. Like we're just like getting each other, we get along, we have great emotional connection, so we can get each other on a very deep level. We can have deep conversation. We can also have like lots of fun together. And yeah, I think we're connecting on the multiple levels. That's what makes it so interesting and so special. I think we connect on the most levels except from one. Otherwise, we would have been in a relationship already. But well, I think life had other plans for us. So yeah.
So you're mentioning we have not connected on the romantical part of this relationship.
Yeah. We just,
why is that, you think?
We just don't have sexual chemistry. Like I don't know. It's a mystery to me because like both of us were attractive people, and like we connect on so many other levels. But yeah, this one is just like, I don't know, like we just feel like family. We just feel like, I don't know, brother and sister. Some Game of Thrones jokes should come here right now. But yeah, it just feels more like, I don't know, bestie type of energy rather than something romantic, which is like a mystery. But yeah, it happens.
It's a mystery because, I mean, if I speak for myself, I haven't experienced something like this before with a woman. So how was it for you? Is it the same or is it because of something different?
I think I've experienced it before, but I mean, from my side. So generally how I experience it, so I would like meet someone with whom I also have this type of friendly energy, but then at the end, someone ends up falling in love with someone, which is a bit tricky. And like generally it wasn't me.
Of course not.
Yeah. So somehow like this energy, this type of relationship faded with time. So yeah, that's how it happened for me. I wasn't able to sustain like long, friendly relationship with men, deep type of relationship, like best friends type of relationship. But I don't think it's impossible. So I'm really curious, like how our dynamic is gonna evolve and like what's gonna happen, like if our paths are gonna cross, if we're gonna like move along or not. So I'm really curious about it.
Me too. And I was wondering, and I remember you said something like what contributes to our bond or relationship is that we are just who we are without any like walls behind, or we do not have to be anyone, and we can just be ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
how did you feel around me and being
Yeah.
yourself? Because you said like something very funny, because you said I wanted to ask you this question specifically, that all the time when you are like your ugliest version, the true self of you,
Yeah.
then the man fell in love with you. But if
Yeah.
you were like trying to be someone else,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So how do you perceive this aspect?
I think from the very beginning, like when we just bonded, it's like I think there was like a bit of time where we were just like checking each other out and just like trying to understand what this dynamic is, like if we like each other, if we don't like each other. But I think this stage went quite fast, and after that, I have realized that since there is no sexual chemistry, since there is no romantical pressure, there is no need to behave. So there's no need to show the best version of yourself. And this is, for example, how I felt for majority of the times when you're entering a romantic relationship and you really, really like someone. Then I, in a way, become like hyper vigilant. It's like, oh my God, like, do they like me? Do they not like me? Like, how do I behave? How do I do this? How do I do that? So then this element of like spontaneity really kind of like dissolve. It fades away. And so it adds this level of unnaturalness to the dynamic where, like, yeah, it takes time. So with the time it dissolves when you get to know the other person, and when you then realize that you really like each other, then slowly you should kind of like showing up more and more of yourself. But with you, I mean, we didn't have that. That's why it was like, all right, there is no pressure, there is no expectation for the romance to happen or something like this. So let's just be ourselves from the top. Like, and I think we went and dove into like very vulnerable and ugly places, like right from the start, which was very unusual. It's like, all right, like this is the shit. Take it. Just can you handle it or can you not handle it? Because if you reject me, I don't really care. Like, okay, it's gonna be sad, but it's not like someone with whom you have like this romantic expectation rejects you. Then it's generally more painful. But when it's just like someone with whom you have like a nice friendly vibe, like with whom you connect on a deep level, it's just like, all right, I can handle it. I can deal with it. So here you go. My worst version. It's not like the worst version, but it's a more like vulnerable version and like unsexy version. And yeah, like with all the shadows without any kind of sugarcoating. Yeah. Yeah. And somehow, because I think, answering your question, because like before, whatever, like there is no pressure, so there is no expectation, and I felt like so natural and so like in flow and just like so goofy and funny and just playful and just not trying to be beautiful or not trying to be anything or anyone. I think it creates a lot of attraction because there's this sense of relaxation and this sense of flow and this sense of just like, I'm just like laid back, I'm just chill and I'm just being myself. And what can be more attractive than that? Like a person that is just like 100% comfortable in their own skin and 100% comfortable with like all of their aspects. Like the amount of the ugly photos that you have of me, I think like only my best friend has. And not even once, like whenever you shared it with me, I had this like, oh, delete it, like I have a second chin, or I have like mayonnaise on my face, or I have this, I have that. I didn't ask you to delete it. I was like, wow, I look like a shaggy dog. I look this, I look that. Which is cool. I love it. Yeah.
You said something crucial, right? I think it's exactly this having of no expectations, not only towards the person you like, but also towards yourself, because we end up having expectations of how we behave or like how the other person behaves. And this creates the space of like being yourself, and you feel comfortable, and then you feel like this love inside of you, and then it's just creating more love, because then you're giving, right? I mean, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Like you are in this giving state, and it's very interesting because we talked also about how the comparison between a relationship. Because when we like message and you said, "No, I don't want to like see you today," whatever, like that didn't happen, to be honest. But it was, I wasn't taking it personally,
Yeah.
or you weren't taking it personally. So, and what do you think? How can you create this kind of atmosphere in a relationship,
Yeah, I think
a
it was
romantic relationship?
a romantic relationship. Yes, I
Yeah.
think for me it was personally like a big lesson, because like our dynamic taught me a lot. I was like, there is no difference between you and the guy that I like. So there is no difference in the romantic dynamic and in like our dynamic. The only difference is the pressure that I feel because I want someone to like me. This is the only thing. And it's purely like the story that I'm telling myself, that I have to be someone else to be liked by the other person, that I have to use, I don't know, some kind of like manipulations and techniques, and I have to give them what they want versus just like being who I am and just like see if it's received like at their end. So yeah, I think for me it was a huge learning, because whenever I would try to fall into this kind of like manipulative state, like, I need to behave this way and that way to get something out of the other person that I like, I would always come back to this like comparison in a way, like, no, I don't need to do it because I can have it, I can be myself and I can be received, I can be liked, I can be accepted, etc. And I don't need to be anyone else, and I don't need to create this pressure, like this mental pressure on myself.
And it's so beautiful and so simple at the same time. Like we just have to be ourselves, and then we attract the people automatically or
Yeah,
automatically who are like meant for us, right?
yeah.
So I don't know how we attracted each other.
I think it was just like, I think it was literally like we had to have this interaction because like it was a wild
Yes.
synchronicity, right? What are the odds? We were like neighbors in Bali. We were living close to each other for a month or so, right? And we were bumping into each other all the time. Like we haven't spoken once except from hello. I've noticed you. I was like, okay, that might be an interesting guy. I was like, okay, I don't care. I'm deep, I am deep into my own triggers and my own trouble. And I was like going through something in Bali. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I've heard that you have a German accent. So, like, the projection that I had is like, oh, he's German. He's probably boring. He's probably like, all these kind of like organized, strict, like,
Not
etc.
playful,
Not
not
playful,
spiritual, not nothing.
very, very serious. Yeah. And so I had also this projection, and I was like, he's supposed to be also an angry German. Yes.
Of course.
Of course. It's like I was grumpy like the
Complaining all the
majority of the
time.
time. Complaining all the time, yes.
Yeah.
Which you kind of do. So you cannot take the German outside of it. But well,
Not all of it. Not all
you
of it.
can, yes, you can overcompensate, which you're doing successfully. And so yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, that it was a wild synchronicity. So what are the odds? So we haven't spoken, and then suddenly I'm walking on the beach in Kopangan, and we're just like bumping into each other. And then we start talking, and it's like, oh, this guy is actually fun, and I'm actually fun. And I think we just like meant to meet, because like, what are the odds, really? It's like minuscule.
Yes.
It's super small.
I remember you said it quite a few times, and you applied it not only in our like relationship interaction, but also in other interaction with other people. The gold nuggets you took from this experience in Bali, like what did you said like 2 things, 3 things are very
Yeah.
essential to, and I mean we all already got into it a little bit, but can
Yeah.
you repeat those?
Yeah. So basically, what I have realized in interactions with people, there are three type of things. Three. I don't want to call it rules, but three principles that,
Wisdoms, yeah, principles.
yeah, wisdoms, principles that I have been unconsciously using, and then I just realized what I'm doing, and actually I voiced it over in this way for the first time to you. And so first is just show up. It means whenever there's a difficult situation, whenever some kind of conflict or confrontation happening in the relationship, like step number one is just like show up for it. Instead of running away, trying to avoid it, swipe it under the rug, pretend that nothing is happening, it's show up. The second one is tell the truth. And tell the truth is like, it's more like express your side of the story. And we all have our own truth. So, and everyone's truth is valid. And so tell my truth. Tell like how I feel about this situation, what is the story that I'm telling myself, etc. And I really like to do it in a non-violent way. And there is like an amazing book, if some of your listeners don't know it, like I highly recommend it. It's called Nonviolent Communication. It's basically a manual how to talk to people and how to go through confrontations. So whenever I am going through a difficult situation, I do my best to speak from my own feelings, from my own perspective, not try to blame and point a finger at the other person, but just express my subjective experience. And the third one is just to kind of do a step back and just let the other person, give the other person space to do whatever they need to do. Maybe they need time to think, maybe they need some space to respond, or maybe they need to process their own feelings, etc. Because sometimes people do not process feelings and situations in a fast manner. Like, for example, I like to do it. So I like to do things at the spot. But what I have realized is, like, some people, they need some time to digest and to reflect and just to go think about it, sleep with it. And then they come and they can actually explain what happened to them and explain their side of the story. And instead of kind of like being anxiously attached and demand from the other people to give you the answer or their side of the story right now in the moment, I have realized that it's useful just to make a small step back and let the other person take their space. So these are the three principles that I'm using whenever I'm confronted with someone or some situation.
It's very interesting because it's very generalistic, and you can use it everywhere, but it's at the same time not as easy as it sounds, right?
Yeah,
To stand up
yeah,
for your own emotions and telling you,
yeah,
because most of the time we are then in a vulnerable situation
yeah,
where it's sometimes not easy to be in this calm state, to see what is happening, to step out and
yeah,
to then, okay, what is the other person
yeah,
thinking? Is,
yeah,
I mean, we thought like this is this concept what I really like to people not intentionally want to hurt us. They are
yeah,
doing things because of how they are conditioned, how they
yeah,
are like dealing with their own shit, right? But we think that their actions are about us, and then we
yeah,
got
yeah,
triggered.
yeah,
And this is like, no, we go into this topic because it's very interesting, and you have like some
yeah.
good insights over here, like this non-violent communication, which is essential, I think, for relationships in general, like
Mhm.
every kind of relationship, and how to handle triggers and those kinds of situations. And especially because I mean, I've seen how you work, and you are quite fast in those emotions and how to handle and see it most of the
Mhm.
time.
Thank you.
but
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, doctor.
because I mean, I've seen you in different situations, and the same for me. Like, I'm getting better in like getting over like what is happening right now, but still I'm tapping into those situations where afterwards I think, what
Mhm,
the fuck, right? What happened over here
mhm.
again, right? And
Yeah,
not to judge myself is very important, but how do you attack this? Like, how can we go through this triggers and those
yeah,
situations in the
yeah,
daily life, and especially romantic partnerships, because it's more challenging, I think, in
yeah.
partnerships.
Yeah, it's more challenging than the partnerships. And I think how our mind works is that, so we never have the full data, right? So whenever we are confronted with someone, we don't have all the information. We do not know what they thought, what they felt, like how their thinking process was, how their action process was. Like, we don't know. And where we don't know, where our mind has gaps, then we start to fill up the information based on our own conditioning, triggers, etc. So we start to fill in these gaps with the worst case scenarios, right? So we start imagining things. We start like adding things up. And generally it's not like a pretty thing, right? That you add on top, like, just sprinkle some nice things. Like, no. It generally
No.
you just sprinkle the worst. Like, right? So you assume like the worst case scenario, like why were they like this, or why did they behave this way, why did they say this, why did they say that? It's because like they're this and that, because they don't give a funk about me, because they're just like a bad person, they're like selfish, da 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 da, whatever your story is. And so here I think the masterful skill is start talking from our own perspective. So like when I'm triggered, instead of like coming and pointing a finger at you, like what you did like is like this and that, I say like I felt in this way and that way. And the story that I was telling myself is that, for example, you don't care, or that you, I don't know, you were thinking just about yourself, you're being selfish, da 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 da, etc. And it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes effort, because it's literally shifting the patterns, like our unconscious patterns, because we're used to blaming other people. And it's also like a very vulnerable thing to do, say that like I'm hurt right now and I feel pain. And like my little girl, for example, was very, very like felt very abandoned or like very lonely or very resentful, it's not a nice thing to do like in the middle of the conflict. It's not comfortable thing to do. It's a nice thing to do, but it's not a comfortable thing to do,
Mm.
because you have to be the first one who's going to like open up and become vulnerable and show your vulnerabilities and weak spots, and the depths of your conditioning and maybe the depths of your shadow. And it's really not easy to do it first. And
Yes.
I personally was frequently trapped in this type of thinking that only when the other person makes the first step, the first move towards me, when the other person opens up, then I have a license to open up as well and be vulnerable. And I have realized that
Mm.
there is no power in it. And so either I put myself under the, how do you call it? It's not put myself under the train, but like, anyways, you got what I mean. Either like I'm going to be the first one, and sometimes I have a chance to be smashed, right? Sometimes the other person isn't going to receive it. Sometimes like people are not ready to receive like your truth. But what are the benefits for me just to be silent and just like to swallowing everything up? Like there is zero. It just breeds resentment, and like I have the pile up of emotions and things start like building up, and I swipe things under the rug, and it's a build up. So then I have this like huge snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then somewhere like along the way I realized that there is no freedom in just like delegating the authority to another person to be the first one and to open up first. And I'm like, I have to do it even if it's uncomfortable, and even there is a risk
Mm.
of being rejected, being judged for my shortcomings, for like like my feelings, for my imperfections, etc. And it was like a big one for me, because I like to
Yes.
be perceived as strong. I like to be perceived as competent. That I like to be perceived as wise, and like I have my shit together. But the reality is like I don't, and I'm a human, and I have like my triggers. I have my pains, and I get triggered, and it's fine. And so it took me a while just to be the one who is opening up first and who like makes a step. So showing up, expressing the truth. And I cannot express like my how my knees and my elbows were shaking in the moments when I was about to do it, especially with someone like in romantic relationship, like with someone that I like. And then knowing that I felt triggered, and I choose not to swallow it right now, and I choose to voice it over. And there is a risk that this person is going to reject me right now, or like think that I'm too dramatic, that I'm like high maintenance, that I'm like inconvenient, that I'm creating too much
Too much.
drama, that I'm too much. Yes. This fear is just crippling. It was like paralyzing me.
It's,
But
yeah, it's,
yeah, but I'm like, what are the chances that I'm gonna resolve and like go through this fear and like build a normal, healthy relationship if I do not do it, if I do not express myself, especially in these aspects, vulnerable aspects. So I've started doing it, and I cannot express like how scary it was. And at the beginning, for example, when I started doing it in my close friendships, my friends were like, whoa, 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 this is too much. Like, your truth is too much. It's just like, why are we doing this? Why are we dealing with this? Like, everything was so great before you started, like, initiating all
Mm.
these, like, brutal, honest conversations. Like, why are you doing it? And I'm like, well, it wasn't my truth. I was not in my true self. I wasn't expressing myself fully. And like there was a part of me that was hidden, and I didn't feel that I connect fully, and I craved connection, and I craved belonging. I craved to form this deep intimate relationship with people. But how can I do it if I do not show these parts of myself? It's really impossible. And so I started doing it. And yes, it's scary. It is still scary, like till this day. But well, there is no other alternative. Either, yes, I just choose to swallow it, or I just express it and just like let the other person
Yeah.
either express their side of the story and have a mature adult communication, or yeah, sometimes people leave. And this is the brutal reality. Sometimes people are not ready for that, and they just cannot handle whatever your truth is because they take it too personally, as you say. And here, I think one of the most useful skills is like whenever we are confronted with a conflict, just make an assumption, one little assumption, that no one is trying to hurt you. Like, no one is trying to hurt you, and no one's intentions are really bad in your close relationship. If just like making this assumption, then it helps to still be there when you're hurt and when you're triggered and when the other person has done something that caused like lots of pain to you. And then another thing is just ask yourself like what is the story that I'm telling myself? Like, what is the
Mm.
story? what is the story, and is it really the reality? Is it what really happened? And just like be a detective of your own mind, of your own consciousness, of your own triggers. Like this is so exciting right now. Like
It's
me and my
exciting
friends,
and fearful as well, huh? Maybe.
yeah. But like right now, me and my friends were saying like whenever we have triggers, there are jams. Like let's go in there because there are some jams on the other side. Because when I understand what it
Always.
is and when I release it, then I feel more freedom, and then I feel more connected to people. Then I feel more myself. I feel more self-expressed, and I feel it helps me to come back to love faster than just breathing in my own resentments.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed you nailed it. Like the conclusion over here, and I really like this saying, this quote that especially in the beginning, if you haven't shown your full truth, then we cannot expect to create harmony, or we cannot create harmony within ourselves and at the same time create harmony in the outer world. So it's most of the time, if you create disharmony in the outer world, you create harmony in your world. Eventually it can create harmony on both sides, but in the first steps you create. And if I really try to like integrate this, because it helps me to, or like it encourages me that I have to speak my truth right now.
Yeah, and
And
I think it's also I want to add to your thing. So generally we have kind of like these big fears around like how other people are going to perceive us, like if they're going to judge us and they're going to put a tag on us. Like for example, if you have a moment of insecurity, right, and you share about it with the other person, like in this situation I felt insecure. The fear is that someone's going to label you insecure. This is the fear, because you don't want to be labeled as insecure, you don't want to be labeled as weak, you don't want to be labeled as like this and that. But the truth is that we all have these parts. Like we have insecure parts, we have weak parts, we have ugly parts, we have like shady parts. We all have it inside of us. And I think it's a fear that someone's going to label us. But at the same time, you realize that if it's a mature interaction with someone, then the other person is going to just take it for what it is, that there is like a part of you, a human part of you, that feels this and that feels triggered, which everyone does from time to time.
that is a huge thing you just said over here, like, and we discussed about this, especially like take the people as they are, not as we want them to be,
Yeah.
because this also creates, okay, the person are just doing, they are just, if you see it like on a rational level, they're just doing their thing, right? It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with you at all.
Yeah.
Normally, I mean,
Yeah.
99% of the time. And on the other hand, I think it's very essential to, especially in the beginning, to speak your truth, because it's so painful. Like this, I mean, it comes from like probably the fear of abandonment, not being loved, and then because we perceive ourselves, or probably society, that we are weak in this moment, as you said, right? And overcoming this and being maybe rejected, especially in the beginning, because we are not fully aware of what is inside of us, and then being rejected by this person who loves us apparently or not, and then losing this person.
Yeah.
But standing up for ourselves, it's like it's
Yeah.
like I'm going through this a lot of times over and over and again, and I thought like I've already been there, now it's easy, and then I see myself in the same situation, or like not same, but advanced level, maybe same, but and it's crazy like how much it can change your life afterwards. Just what you said, it creates a lot of energy, freedom, and you feel not enlightened, but you feel this kind of freedom again, right? You say, yes, that's who I want to be, and now I'm showing myself. But I think what is crucial here, and we had this dynamic between us as well, that if you start doing it, and I would recommend to everyone who's like starting to involve their emotions, that you have at least one person you can talk to, because this person can shift your thinking and show your own weak spots, because normally it's about going like within you, right, and not projecting on the other person. And so, a lot of times we don't see it, especially when we are in this blaming mode, this and he and she is this and not doing and not giving me love, but I want all of this and blah blah blah. But then the other person says like, but are you giving this, or are you not the same, or like, and having a person where you can feel safe talking about your emotions, then it's a good starting point. What do you think about how can you create like this environment, or like people you can be this opened?
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. It's a big thing to have people around you that keep you accountable. So whenever you're telling yourself some bullshit story and you're going into the victim mode or in the blaming mode, like having the people around you who have the balls to say like, hey, look, maybe it's not, it's not what you think. You little piece of. I don't know.
To the ones who are just listening, we have like this kind, and we are spitting and just.
It's just our joke. I think no one in the world understands it. We just roll with it. Well, so what was I talking about? Yeah, like having people with whom you feel like people that keep you accountable. This is essential. People who are not afraid to like slap you on the face, not literally, but like figuratively when you forget who you are. and just yeah, like people with whom you don't have to be defensive. I think this is very valuable if you have people around you who take you exactly as you are, who accept you exactly as you are, with whom you can just like drop all your mask and be raw, brutal, and vulnerable about all of your shortcomings and tell like your truth. And sometimes your truth in the moment is that like you're blaming someone, you're in the victim mode, and then this is your truth in the moment, right? And then when the other person can listen to it and kind of like get it, because we all sometimes get stuck in the victim mode, which is fine, and we also sometimes blame the other people, which is also fine, but not kind of like supply more energy into your victimhood, but like with love and compassion help you to come back to the truth when you're not the victim, where like help you to see the situation from the other angle, from the other perspective. And it takes time, and it takes skill, and it takes like the right people around you. But whenever you have these type of interactions and this type of community around you, then you're just invincible, because yeah, because you just cannot bullshit yourself anymore, because there's going to be someone who's going to tell you the brutally honest truth.
So this is like one aspect of why I've like, for me, was like this bond we have between like with a woman. I never had this type of bond, especially with women who were like this honest to me and could analyze and like show me why my weaknesses or blind spots. And what I feel very nourishing as well is that we tend like I think it's a perfect thing to do. So because, for example, I got to know you and I could see some of your inner childs, let's say, or like some of your egos which were coming up, and which is nice if you're not in this partnership, or you can also do it in the partnership, but then making fun out of it after a while. And like, I mean, you have to be careful about not to overdo it, but we did it a lot of times. And what it creates is that you're starting making fun of your own ego when you are like very dramatic, when you are like, I don't know, like very defensive or whatever. And that is a beautiful thing to do, like really.
I think it was like one of the best moments that we've had, when we were just like, we were laughing our asses off, and we were laughing our asses off about like our own internal drama that we made up, like literally. I think it was such a beautiful moments and such a beautiful experiences. And in general, like we've had a very raw, vulnerable moment where some of us had really to open up, like on a very deep level, like in a space, like in a safe space, but it was still very uncomfortable. And then right after it, just like go into these jokes and like start making fun of it, and just like share what happened, and like what the fears were, and like what were the story, whenever we were sharing our vulnerable truths. And I think it was the best. I think like the power of humor is largely underestimated, and if we just like don't take everything we think so seriously and the stories that we make up so seriously, then we're just so free, and life is just a playground instead of a drama, constant drama.
Yeah, because we're making up the story in our heads, right? Like, I mean, if you look at it like through like rational mind, there's nothing, no drama, no nothing, right? Like another point which you taught me, which is very powerful, is when you are in this defensive mode and you feel triggered. I want to mention this one because it can really benefit everyone here who's listening, that you like zoom out, of course, if it's possible, and then think about the other person, what you like about the other person, and what she or he provides to you, and what has he done or she has done for you. And is it really this dynamic, this dynamic you are just right in right now? Is it really that bad, or is it like you are creating the situation because you are jumping to some conclusions, doing assumptions, as you said? And it's what it creates. It's beautiful, because then you are creating a space of love inside of yourself, and then you are emanating this love towards the other person, and then most of the time it loses up.
Yeah.
You say what you value about the other person, and then turning around from blaming to this is how what I feel. I mean, this concept,
Yeah.
not concept, like this method or methodology, it's very powerful. I use it
Yeah.
quite a few times now, and most of the time it was successful. Whatever, it resolved
Yeah.
the situation. So
Yeah, I think so. Whenever in the situation when there is trigger, what happens is that two people they got defensive, right? And when like for both of you the guards are up, then it's very difficult to hear each other and to hear what the other person is saying. So we become like so zoomed into our own pain that it becomes really like our vision is so narrow. We just like see our pain and like what happened to us and like our small little miserable me that went through this and that, or like it's only our small hurt inner child that it has a word to say right now, which sometimes can be like a starting point. And for example, like with you, we've had these moments when we were just kind of like sharing our own pains, me pain of my trigger and you pain of your trigger. But then because like both of us were very analytical, so we were able like to turn it around, to look at
to
it like
unwrap it.
from different angles, like to see where no. But the thing is that sometimes like not all the people have the same skills, right? Not all the people can analyze their emotions and analyze their triggers and do it in the moment. So it takes like a skill, and not everyone is able to do it, and not everyone has to do it. And then there is another thing, another beautiful way how it's possible to handle it, which is also new to me because like I've learned it from another person that is very dear to me. Sometimes when the other person is triggered, instead of focusing on your own pain, you can just like ask the other person what the other person needs to feel safe right now, to feel safe, seen, like valued, and like drop the defenses and just like to connect on the heart level. And just like see what the response is. And sometimes like the response might be, and like let's say as it was in my case, the response was like, can you name something that like I've done right versus everything that like I've done wrong. And this can also be a beautiful way, because when you start naming these things in the moment, your brain literally starts zooming out. You start seeing that
Yes.
instead of like just everything that went wrong, these like worst case scenario thinking, you start like adding pieces, and you add pieces. This was right, this was right, this was right, this was right, this was right. And then suddenly you see like, oh, actually the story that I was telling myself was complete bullshit. It wasn't the actual situation. And it helps you to have this zoom out, to see the situation broader, and to see what actually happened in a more objective way, if you wish. Plus kind of like get out of this like negative thinking, and get out of this like worst case scenario, and get out of like projecting your pain onto the other person, etc. And then see that things are not black and white generally. Like things are somewhere in the middle. There are good things, and there are like things that were not perfect, like not ideal, but still the situation is much broader than you tell yourself whenever you are focusing on your own pain. And when you're in your
Mm.
pain, and the other person like doesn't really know how to handle the other person when they're in their pain, then generally they would get defensive, and they would start like giving you the rational like justifications why it's incorrect. It's, I think it's quite often happens between in the dynamic between men and women. So men tend to get rational when they get hurt, and women like they start to speak from their own pain. They're in their pain, and they want to be seen and held and just witness and just accepted in their pain. And men, they start to say like, no, listen, like it wasn't like
Here's a
this.
solution.
There's a
This is a
solution.
solution.
Yeah,
Rational.
yeah. So it kind of like takes a skill for the man to understand like what to do with a woman when she becomes emotional, because the worst thing that you can do is just like to tell her that her emotions are wrong, that like what she feels is not valid. But whenever, for example, you're encountered with these type of situations, okay, if you see that you're not going anywhere and that you're not connecting on the heart level, instead of trying to get something from the other person that the other person maybe is not capable of giving to you in the moment, what if you just like put the focus from yourself and like your pain towards like, how can I make the other person feel comfortable, and how can I make the other person to open up, and how can I help the other
Mm.
person to connect to me on the heart level versus just like rationally justifying something.
Expecting, right?
Yeah. Expecting is a big one. It's a big one. I think expectation is another like micro topic that we could cover, because expectations are big, and I think they're just like ruining everything. But let's finish with this one first. Maybe I can just like do the bottom line, like the summary. There are many ways how you can deal with triggers in the moment, right? And sometimes it's easy because one person is triggered and another one is not triggered. Then the one that is not triggered can just like hold the space and be with the other and their pain and and help them out of it. Or not even like help them out of it, like let the person who is in pain get out of their own pain, but just like being a witnessing, loving, present person. But then sometimes it doesn't work, because when two are triggered, then it gets a bit tricky, because like two get
Nasty,
defensive.
yeah.
Yes, and then like instead of trying to demand from the other person to hold space for you, to be something for you, to behave in a certain way, to handle your triggers in a certain way, to handle you when you're triggered in a certain way, instead of having all those lists and all those expectations, like what if you just like shift your perspective a bit and it's like, okay, we're not connecting right now. Like, what can I do? Like, how can I contribute towards this connection? How can I zoom out? Like, how can I make the other person comfortable, versus focusing on my own pain and on my own discomfort? So there are multiple ways to do it.
So, but on the core of all of this is being conscious about your own feelings and emotions. Do you have like a trick or like a tip of how to get more conscious about your own emotions, feelings in the beginning, when you're like trying to get to the point, but also like in the situations when you have like, I mean, an argument or maybe afterwards, like,
well, it's a skill, man. It's like a muscle. It's a muscle, right? So
how do I train it?
How do I train? It's like it doesn't happen overnight. So you have to first of all pay attention, right? So I think step number one is always understand emotions. Because what I have realized is that some people, they do not know how emotions feel in their body. Or like they feel some discomfort in their body, but they cannot label it as an emotion. Okay? So I think first is like emotional literacy and like accuracy. It's understanding what do I feel, and understanding like where do I feel it in my body. Because eventually emotions are just chemical reactions, right? It's just chemical reactions that are released, and so we start feeling something physically. And step number one is just to understand what it is. And if you do not know, there are like multiple ways how to understand emotions, understand how the emotions feel. Like you can work with like somatic therapies, or you can work with any type of like a body worker, etc. Just to understand, just to bridge the gap between emotion and sensation. And then being self-aware. Like first you need to be, maybe it's even like step one is just like awareness. It's just like observing, right? And then step two is just to link the two. And it's just all type of mindfulness meditations, whatever helps you to observe on the deeper level yourself, your mind, your emotions, your body, everything that is happening, and just like get still and just be a witness. So this is step number one. Step number two is what I've said. Understand like what is this emotion, where do I feel it in my body. And step number three, learn how to work with it on your own. There are also like multiple methods. Like one of my most favorite ones is EFT, emotional freedom technique. For those who don't know, they can just like Google it or YouTube it. There are like a bunch of materials over there. And then when you start understanding it yourself, like slowly, when you become aware of it, you understand what it is, you learn how to release it, then you can start talking about it. You can start sharing it with the other people. So whenever you feel that something is bubbling up to the surface, you feel some discomfort in your body, or someone said something to you and you had this kind of like shrinking sensation in your chest, etc. And then you can start talking about it with the others. Like, listen, now I felt this and that, and it made me want to shrink and da. Yeah, and it comes kind of like naturally. So the more you practice, the more you're aware of it, and the more you can process, like let it go it effectively, and it not to get stuck in your body, in your mind, everywhere, and not ruin and damage your relationship with other people. What would you say, doctor? How would you approach this?
So, I mean, I've been in the place as well. I mean, I know how it feels when you feel overwhelmed, but you cannot really point it out, what is it? And I've been, I would say, most of my life in this state, and I could not say what kind of emotion it is and that it is an emotion. Most of the time I said, no, I'm not emotional, but people were telling me I'm emotional. Sometimes I still get it wrong. So, so I started to dig into it, and it started with, of course, meditation. But I think where I would like not disagree, but you can, even not being aware of your own emotions, you can start talking about it when you are like in a neutral space, like when you are like, or a state, I want to say a state. So you can talk about people you are connected to and say like, I was feeling, I don't know, I could not, I feel pressured, whatever. It's not really an emotion, but you can still like how your body reacted and you feel uncomfortable. And then maybe the other person can help you to like, what is it? And then probably then you can at some point you can acknowledge your body throughout conversations or when you got triggered that something is off, and every time this off is coming, that you then try to observe it. As you said, it's like it's not easy, especially not if you're triggered. Maybe it happens afterwards, but eventually it comes to a point where you can get it into the point. And I would not start in the romantic relationship because it's the hardest thing to do, but with friends.
I think it's the
I mean,
best thing to do because romantic relationship, they generally trigger you the most. So this is like a really big playground.
no, I wanted to say you're right, but I wanted to say if you're in the beginning, it's very hard if you like start at the like when you are really triggered because you can probably not observe it because you're just starting to observe. So
Yeah.
don't be too harsh on yourself. It's not working in the relationship or partnership, but if you try it like with friends and then you see how you react, and then all of a sudden you got more observant about, or you got more
Yeah.
sensitive to your own feelings, and then you can apply this on the relationship, but
Yeah.
not expecting it for the like, I don't know, for the nuclear bomb. When the nuclear bomb is happening, that you are then able to like find the right solution in this space.
Yeah. Yeah,
That is what I would do.
but by the way, I'll say that I mean there are so many ways and
Yeah,
there is
of
like not
course.
one way. And I think everything comes down to the fact of like just a person becoming curious about themselves and how they work and how they perceive things, how they feel emotions, how they feel the world, if they feel at all, or if they're like completely numb. So I think it's very different. It's very personalized. It's very different for everyone. And I think the thing is just to find your own way, to find your own way, your own tools, your own methods. Just get inspired by the others, but test and trial everything yourself and just like see what works for you. Because like for example, I see like my bestie, okay? For example, I feel and analyze at the same time. So that's happening simultaneously. I I feel things in my body. So I notice I'm very aware of my body and what's happening inside of my body, like almost at all times. And then when I identify something, then like the analysis starts, like what it is, where it is, what kind of emotion it is, what is the story, so there is like this entire detective process that is happening inside of my head whenever I feel something. Okay. But this is not, and I think it also works in a similar way for you.
Yes.
Yes. So you're also like feeling and analyzing at the same time. But for example, my best friend, she's not like that. She's purely like feeling. She's feeling and she feels, she doesn't know what she feels, but she feels it fully, completely, etc. And sometimes like we play this game when I'm becoming the translator of her emotions, right? And she's like, how do you know? And I'm like, it's obvious, okay, for me. And so sometimes maybe it's useful to work with someone like, I don't know, a coach, a therapist, etc., who will help you to who will be your detective, who will help you to detect your emotions, who will help you to go through this analytical process, and who will help you to understand them, and who will help you to process them and to release them, etc. And it's so individual. So I think you should be curious, and it's cool to find your own ways, like what works for you and how you work, understand your body, your emotions.
So I would like to ask you like two last questions for
But
our
first,
podcast.
about what about the expectations?
What do you want to tell us about expectations?
About expectations, I think it's very interesting how whenever we get, especially it works in the romantic relationship. That's how it works for me, for example. Whenever, for example, in our dynamic, we're friends and there are little to no expectations, okay? I mean, there are some basic human expectations, right? That we're gonna like show up for each other, that we're gonna respond to each other, because like otherwise it's impossible to have an interaction, right? Uh, but I think there are less expectations than there are in romantic partnerships, because in a romantic partnership, when we meet someone and when we like someone, we want this person to be a certain way, to meet our standards, to meet our expectations, to be and to show up a certain way, and to be a certain way, and da 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 da, which creates a lot of projections. So, and that's why they say is at the beginning you're wearing like these pink tinted glasses and you're seeing the other person through the lens of like, your imagination versus the reality, what the other person is. What I have realized throughout our dynamic and seeing how little expectations they are, I have realized that I can also apply it into my romantic partnerships. I could also have the same type of thinking. Is there is no difference between you and, like, for example, a guy that I'm seeing, right? The only difference is that there is more feelings involved, like the chemistry is more intense. And I have realized how these expectations, they're just start to like mess up the dynamic. And I was like, what if I can just drop the expectation, and instead of projecting something on the other person, instead of wanting them to behave a certain way and be a certain way, what if I could just like observe and see how they show up instead of trying to expect them to show up in a certain way? So it becomes again this type of exploration of the other person versus expectation from the other person. And when you explore, you are curious. And you're curious, and you like, you don't want things to be in one way or another. You just want to know how the thing is, or like how the person is. And I think it opens up this beautiful container, if you wish, where you're able just to look at the other person and look at their actions and hear their words for what they are versus for what you want them to be. And sometimes it's a bit bitter because sometimes you want other things, right?
Yes. That
But
would be my next question. Like, how would you? In
yeah,
the theory, it's very easy, but
yeah,
I've noticed by myself that I
yeah,
want to do like I want to be curious and just
yeah,
like let their actions speak for
yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
But then I see actions I don't like, and then
yeah.
it's like, oh.
Of course, of course. And then things get like a bit bitter, right? And I mean, of course, there are things that are a deal breaker for you that you wouldn't be able to tolerate, right? Which are essential in your relationship. And then, I mean, buddy, responsibility is on you. Like, if you wish to continue, if you wish to accept these ways, first, like, get curious and understand like why this person is doing things like in one way or another, if they're like always doing it, etc. And then understand if you're okay just to be with it the way it is or not. And then if not, then there is no point in trying to change the other person. Then if you don't like it, then it's your responsibility just like to stand up and
Hmm.
go. But I think one important thing is just to remember that like no one will ever fulfill all your needs. Like, duh, of course, you'll say.
Yeah,
But
obvious.
yeah, but the moment when you remember that the only thing that you're really responsible for is for the way how you feel, and when you're accountable for it, and when you take responsibility for it, and you realize that the other person has little to do with it, they can just like reveal something that was already within you, but they cannot create something new generally, unless they're, I don't know, super violent, super toxic, whatever. We're not talking about these type of situations. um, so how I perceive it is that, okay, I'm responsible for my own feelings. I'm responsible for my own sense of well-being, and I'm responsible for kind of like speaking up, showing up, and expressing myself and my truth in the relationship. And then the beautiful shift and the beautiful thing happens when you stop dropping the expectations, when you just become curious about the other person and their ways of showing up in relationship. And then you understand if you're kind of like, you want the same thing, or you don't want the same thing. But still, you remember that it's not the other person who is like making you feeling a certain way. The other person just reveals whatever is within you.
Yes.
So it just like becomes this beautiful exploration, and it's endless exploration because it never finishes. You
Hmm.
start exploring, and then like we all evolve and we all change. And yeah, like the further you go, it seems like you know the other person better and better and better. But at the same time, we all change. And if you like just drop and drop and drop expectations like at all times, and just like come back to your truth, and come back to the idea that you're deciding how you feel and you're responsible for your own feelings, then it
Hmm.
removes a lot of tension, and it removes a lot of expectation and a lot of pressure from the relationship. And that's where two people can really blossom, when I don't have to be someone else. So I'm just like responsible for myself, and I'm showing up for myself, and then I'm able to show up for you, and you do the same. Then we have this beautiful dynamic, this beautiful interaction, where we help each other blossom versus we try to project things on each other, and we try, to change each other,
No,
etc.
being dependent as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like moving out of codependency by taking responsibility. and by just getting curious and getting to know the real person.
It's very powerful, especially when it comes to taking responsibility. For me, what I ask myself a lot of times when I'm in those situations, doesn't matter if it's expectations, I got triggered. I ask myself, what does this has to do with me?
Mm-hmm.
So this also puts the focus away from the other person onto myself.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I have to do with this? What is this showing me? Why does it trigger me in this moment? And then just another like maybe question you can ask yourself to get out of this blaming victimhood and start taking accountability to yourself and ask yourself, okay, what is it really like? Because no one can create an emotion inside of yourself, right? No one. It's always you, your thoughts, you are jumping to conclusions, you're dramatizing everything. I mean, for me, this was a big lesson over the last couple of years, that I'm not like my emotions as well. This creates a little bit of space, which allows to, what is it about this emotion? I mean, if you're already aware of your emotion, then okay, I'm not this emotion, so I can breathe. So it's just a part of me. I like that you said it, not in the podcast, but you said it a lot of times. It's just a part of me feels like this. A part of me is triggered right now. Not everyone inside of myself, not to be schizophrenic, but it's very powerful. Even in communication, if you say just a part of me feels triggered right now, but I still love you, for example, and it's so beautiful to, even if you receive it, because it gives you like, okay, this person in general like likes me and still has like positive or loving intentions, feelings for me, but one part of them maybe not. So that is okay. Then we can like go on from this point. This is quite powerful, I think. And coming to an end, I would like to ask you like one question is, what advice would you give to your younger self in terms of nonviolent communication, partnership?
Buckle up. It's gonna be intense.
And try to do it like in maybe 4 to 5 sentences.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest one would be just do what you're doing, express your truth, and just, if people want to leave, let them leave. Don't try to hold on to people, to experiences, to whatever it is. Because, I think I have been stuck a lot of the times because I was afraid of confrontations. I was afraid of expressing my own truth, because I would be afraid that the other person would leave. They wouldn't accept my truth. And the earlier they leave, the better. That's what I would tell to my younger self. Like, people that have to be in your life, they will be in your life. People who have to leave, it doesn't matter what you do or what you do not do, they're still gonna leave. So the earlier, the better. The earlier, like, I start moving on, the faster something new or someone new comes in. That's about it.
Going through the fear, yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's this fear of rejection. Like, my younger self felt a lot of it. I mean, I do feel it still, but not of this course, amplitude. Yes.
Beautiful. I thank you so much, Ania, for this podcast and all of your insights. And
thank you, Marcello.
And I'm still intrigued by the way how we interacted with each other, and the ways, and even we got into a trigger, maybe to close it up, we got into triggers as well, and how we solved this trigger and analyzing it with each other. And it was like beautiful, like being vulnerable, but on the same time being able to talk it through. This is something very connecting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like this is what I love about our dynamics. I think both of us, we're detectives, and how we handle like our own triggers, like when we're triggered by each other, is that like going in the full detective mode and just like finding the missing pieces, like finding the missing evidences. And when the missing evidence is found, then it's just And man, drop the mic. Yes, I really love the type of interaction that we have, and like how we're able to express ourselves and how we're able to interact with each other. And I think how we're able just like to show different facets of ourselves and how we can just like be ourselves fully. I think this is very beautiful, and I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. And also like how you are able to hold space is just remarkable. It's just incredible, and it's quite rare in men. I think it's more common in women because we're a bit more used to it. but in men it's quite rare, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.